The candlelight flickered softly across the white tablecloth, casting a warm glow over the delicate china and crystal glasses. The hum of conversation around us was a gentle backdrop, but my focus was entirely on Daniel. He had chosen this elegant hotel restaurant for our dinner, a place far grander than our usual haunts. I assumed it was to discuss his retirement, but the way he was looking at me now, intense, searching, made my stomach twist in a way I hadn't felt in years. "Gabriel," he began, his voice low and steady, "I've been meaning to tell you something for a long time. But with my retirement looming, I can't keep it to myself any longer." I set my fork down, my appetite suddenly gone. Why does this feel like more than just a work conversation? My fingers tightened around the stem of my wine glass. "Of course, Daniel. You know you can tell me anything." He leaned forward slightly, his eyes never leaving mine. "I've always admired you, Gabriel. Your dedication, your intelligence, your grace. But over the years, it's become more than admiration. I've developed feelings for you. Real feelings." The words hung in the air between us, heavy and undeniable. My breath caught, and for a moment, the entire room seemed to tilt. Feelings? For me? I felt my cheeks flush, a mix of shock and something else, something I couldn't quite name. "Daniel, I don't know what to say." He reached across the table, his hand hovering just above mine but not touching, as if he was afraid to bridge the gap. "You don't have to say anything right now. I just needed you to know. I couldn't let this moment pass without telling you." I nodded slowly, my mind racing. This changes everything. The weight of his confession settled over me like a fog, clouding my thoughts. I managed a small smile, though my heart was pounding. "Thank you for being honest with me, Daniel. I need some time to process this." "Of course," he said softly, leaning back in his chair. "Take all the time you need." The rest of the dinner passed in a blur. I replied to his questions about work, about his retirement plans, but my mind was elsewhere. How could I have missed this? I thought, glancing at him over the rim of my glass. His demeanor was as composed as ever, but there was a vulnerability in his eyes that I hadn't noticed before. Later, as he drove me home, the silence in the car was thick with unspoken words. I stared out the window, watching the city lights blur past. What does this mean for us? For my job? For me? I couldn't begin to untangle the emotions swirling inside me. When we pulled up to my house, he turned to me, his expression earnest. "Gabriel, I know this is unexpected. But I meant every word I said. I hope you'll consider it." I nodded, my throat tight. "I will, Daniel. Good night." The moment the door closed behind me, I leaned against it, letting out a shaky breath. What just happened? My mind replayed the evening, each word, each glance, each heartbeat. I stripped off my dress and climbed into bed, but sleep was impossible. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts a chaotic whirlwind. By dawn, I was no closer to understanding my feelings. But one thing was clear, things between Daniel and me would never be the same. When I arrived at work the next morning, there was a single red rose on my desk. My heart skipped a beat as I picked it up, the petals soft against my fingertips. There was no note, but I didn't need one. I knew it was from him. The day passed in a strange tension. Daniel was as professional as ever, but there was a new awareness between us. Every glance, every word, felt charged with something unspoken. I tried to focus on my work, but my mind kept drifting back to the rose, to the dinner, to his confession. Toward the end of the day, he stopped by my desk. "Gabriel, would you like to have dinner again tonight?" Somewhere less formal this time. I hesitated, my fingers tightening around the pen I was holding. Is this wise? But then I thought of the rose, of the vulnerability in his eyes, of the way my heart had raced when he'd confessed his feelings. "Yes," I said softly. "I'd like that." We chose a quiet little bistro. A world away from the elegance of the night before. The atmosphere was warm, intimate. We talked about everything and nothing, books, travel, the weather. But beneath the surface, there was a new connection, a tentative exploration of what we could be to each other. As he drove me home that night, I found myself leaning back in the passenger seat, a small smile playing on my lips. Maybe this isn't such a bad idea, I thought, glancing at him. Maybe it's time to take a chance. When we pulled up to my house, he turned to me, his expression soft. Gabriel, I know this is all very new. But I want you to know. I'm here. Whatever you decide. I reached out, my hand brushing his before I could second-guess myself. Thank you, Daniel. That means a lot to me. I stepped out of the car, the cool night air brushing against my skin. As I walked to my door, I could feel his eyes on me, a warm presence that followed me all the way inside. I closed the door behind me, leaning against it, my heart racing. What are you doing, Gabriel? I thought, but for the first time, the question didn't scare me. Instead, it filled me with a strange, hopeful anticipation. A smile tugged at my lips as I reached up to touch the rose still pinned to my blazer. Maybe this is the start of something beautiful. The next morning, I woke up with Daniel's words still echoing in my mind. Whatever you decide. I stared at the ceiling, my thoughts swirling. I couldn't remember the last time someone had given me the space to choose, to truly weigh my feelings without pressure. It was unsettling, yet liberating. I felt a warmth in my chest, something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. I dressed carefully, my fingers lingering on the red rose I had placed in a vase the night before. Its petals were soft, vibrant, a stark contrast to the muted tones of my bedroom. I pinned a single petal to the lapel of my blazer, a quiet acknowledgement of the shift in my world. When I arrived at work, I found Daniel already in his office, his presence a steady hum through the glass walls. He looked up as I passed, and for a moment, our eyes met. There was no awkwardness, no tension, just a quiet understanding. The day unfolded with its usual rhythm, but beneath the surface, everything felt different. His voice on the intercom sounded warmer, his emails carried a subtle undercurrent of something more. When he handed me a file, his fingers brushed mine, and I felt that same electric spark from the night before. I quickly looked away, focusing on the papers in my hands, but I could feel his gaze linger. Lunch? The word popped up on my screen, a simple question that made my heart skip. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Was this a professional invitation or something more? Before I could overthink it, I typed back, sure. He emerged from his office moments later, his jacket slung over one arm. Just us, he said, his voice low, and I felt a flush rise to my cheeks. We walked to a quiet cafe down the street, the autumn sun casting a golden glow over the sidewalk. He held the door open for me, his hand brushing my back as I stepped inside. The gesture was small, almost imperceptible, but it sent a wave of warmth through me. We sat by the window, the sunlight filtering through the glass, and for the first time, I noticed the faint lines around his eyes, the way his hair had just started to gray at the temples. He wasn't just my boss anymore. He was Daniel. How are you holding up? He asked, his tone gentle. I looked down at my hands, twisting the napkin in my lap. Honestly? I'm still processing. This is a lot. He nodded, his expression thoughtful. I understand. I didn't mean to overwhelm you. I just needed you to know how I feel. I appreciate that, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. It's just, I've spent so many years seeing you as my boss. This is all so new. He reached across the table, his hand covering mine. Take your time, Gabriel. I'm not going anywhere. His words, so simple yet so profound, made my breath catch. I didn't pull my hand away. Instead, I let myself feel the warmth of his touch, the steady reassurance it offered. That evening, as I sat on my couch with a cup of tea, I replayed the day in my mind. The way he looked at me, the way his voice softened when he spoke my name, it was all so different from the years of professionalism we'd shared. I felt a flutter in my chest, a mix of excitement and fear. You're 52, Gabriel. Is this really the time to open your heart? The question lingered, but for the first time, I didn't dismiss it outright. The next few days passed in a quiet dance. We exchanged glances, shared knowing smiles, but neither of us pushed. It was as if we were both savoring this new connection, letting it grow at its own pace. Then, on Friday evening, he appeared at my desk as I was packing up. "Dinner tonight?" he asked, his voice casual, but there was a hopeful note in it that made me smile. We went to a small Italian restaurant, tucked away on a quiet street. The ambience was intimate, the kind of place where the walls seemed to absorb conversations, leaving only the soft hum of music and the clink of glasses. We talked about everything, our childhoods, our dreams, the paths that had led us here. He told me about his retirement plans, how he wanted to travel, to see the world while he still could. "I'd like someone to share it with," he said, his eyes meeting mine. The weight of his words hung in the air, and I felt my heart quicken. "Daniel," I began, but he shook his head. "No pressure, Gabriel. I just wanted you to know." As we left the restaurant, he offered me his arm, and I took it, my hand resting lightly in the crook of his elbow. The night was cool, the streetlights casting a warm glow over the sidewalk. When we reached his car, he opened the door for me, his hand brushing my arm as I slipped inside. The drive home was quiet, the hum of the engine a soothing backdrop to my thoughts. I glanced at him, his profile illuminated by the dashboard lights, and felt a surge of something, affection, maybe. Or something deeper. When we pulled up to my house, he turned to me, his expression soft. "Gabriel, Yes?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He hesitated, then smiled. "Good night. Sleep well." I stepped out of the car, my heart pounding. As I walked to my door, I could feel his eyes on me, a warm presence that followed me all the way inside. I leaned against the door, my breath coming in shallow gasps. "What are you doing, Gabriel?" The question floated through my mind, but this time, there was no hesitation, no fear. I pressed a hand to my chest, feeling the steady beat of my heart. For the first time in years, it felt like it was beating for something, for someone. I walked to the window, pulling back the curtain just enough to see his car still parked at the curb. He was waiting, making sure I got inside safely. I smiled, a quiet warmth spreading through me. Maybe this is the start of something beautiful. But as I stood there, watching, a sudden thought struck me. What if I went back out there? What if I told him how I felt, right now, in the quiet of the night? My hand hovered over the doorknob, my pulse quickening. What would happen if I opened the door? I wondered, my heart racing. What would I say? My hand lingered on the doorknob, the cool metal pressing into my palm. What if I just opened it? My thoughts were a whirlwind, each one tugging me in a different direction. My heart thrummed in my chest, loud enough that I half wondered if Daniel could hear it from his car. I glanced out the window again. He was still there, the faint glow of his dashboard lights illuminating his face. He wasn't moving, wasn't leaving. Just waiting. I took a deep breath, my fingers tightening on the knob. This is crazy. This is reckless. This is... I exhaled slowly, my breath fogging the glass slightly. This is what I want. Before I could second-guess myself, I turned the knob and stepped outside. The night air was cool against my skin, a sharp contrast to the warmth coursing through me. I could hear the faint hum of his car engine, steady and low. My pace quickened, the sound of my heels clicking against the pavement echoing in the quiet street. He must have heard me coming because the passenger side window rolled down before I even reached the car. His face appeared, shadowed but familiar, the faint lines around his eyes softened by the dim light. "Gabriel?" His voice was quiet, questioning, but there was a hint of something else beneath it. Hope, maybe. Or surprise. I stopped just outside the car, my hands clasped in front of me. "You're still here," I said, stating the obvious. "I was just making sure you got in okay," he replied, his tone steady but cautious. I nodded, though I wasn't sure if he could see me in the darkness. I did. But, I hesitated, my words catching in my throat. "Just say it. Say what you came out here to say." "But," he prompted, his voice soft, encouraging. I swallowed hard, my heart pounding so loudly I was certain he could hear it. "But I couldn't let you leave without telling you something." He didn't respond, just waited, his eyes fixed on me. The silence stretched between us, heavy and charged. I took another step closer, my hands trembling slightly. "Daniel," I paused, my thoughts jumbling together. How do you say something like this? How do you put it into words? Take your time, he said gently, his voice like a lifeline in the chaos of my mind. I exhaled shakily, my breath visible in the cool night air. I think I feel the same way, I finally admitted, the words tumbling out in a rush. About you. For a moment, he didn't say anything. The silence was deafening, and I wondered if I'd made a mistake. What if I misread everything? What if he's changed his mind? But then I saw it, the way his face softened, the faint smile that tugged at the corners of his mouth. Gabriel, he said, my name almost a whisper on his lips. He reached out, his hand resting on the edge of the window, so close to mine but not quite touching. That means more to me than you know. I felt a lump rise in my throat, my eyes stinging with unshed tears. I've been thinking about it all night, I confessed, my voice barely above a whisper. About us. About what this could be. And, he asked, his tone cautious but hopeful. I hesitated, my mind racing. And I think I want to find out. The words hung in the air between us, heavy with possibility. For a moment, neither of us spoke, the silence stretching on. And then, slowly, he opened the car door and stepped out. He was taller than I remembered, or maybe it was just the way he stood, his presence filling the space between us. He took a step closer, his eyes never leaving mine. Gabriel, he said again, his voice low and steady. I don't want to rush this. I don't want to scare you. But I need you to know that I'm serious. About you. About us. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. He reached out, his hand brushing against mine, the touch sending a shiver through me. This doesn't have to be complicated, he said softly. We've known each other for years. We've worked together, trusted each other. Maybe this is just the next step. I looked down at our hands, his fingers now intertwined with mine, their warmth a stark contrast to the cool night air. Maybe, I whispered, the word almost lost in the stillness. He squeezed my hand gently, his touch reassuring. Take all the time you need, he said. This is new for both of us. But I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I looked up, meeting his gaze. In the dim light, I could see the faint lines around his eyes, the gray at his temples. He was older, yes, but there was a kindness in his expression that made my chest ache. This is real. This is happening. I'm scared, I admitted, my voice barely audible. So am I, he said without hesitation. But that doesn't mean we should walk away from this. I nodded, my throat tightening. You're right. He smiled, a small, gentle curve of his lips. Go inside, he said softly. Get some rest. We'll talk tomorrow. I hesitated, not wanting to let go of his hand, not wanting to break the moment. But he was right. This was too big, too important, to rush. I nodded, squeezing his hand one last time before letting go. Good night, Daniel, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Good night, Gabriel, he replied, his tone warm. I turned and walked back to my door, my steps slow and deliberate. When I reached the porch, I glanced back. He was still standing there, watching me, his silhouette framed by the soft glow of the streetlights. I stepped inside, closing the door softly behind me. I leaned against it, my heart still racing but my mind clearer than it had been in days. This is real. This is happening. As I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, something fundamental. I changed into my pajamas and crawled into bed, but sleep seemed impossible. My mind was racing, replaying every word, every touch. I stared at the ceiling, the moonlight filtering through the curtains casting delicate shadows across the room. What happens now? I wondered. What does this mean for us? The questions swirled in my mind, each one more urgent than the last. But beneath the uncertainty, there was a quiet sense of hope, a flicker of something warm and bright. This could be the start of something beautiful. I closed my eyes, letting the notion settle over me like a blanket. For the first time in years, I felt alive. And as I drifted off to sleep, one thought lingered in my mind. Tomorrow is a new day. The morning light streamed through the blinds, casting stripes of gold across my bedroom floor. I stretched, feeling the weight of last night's conversation still lingering in the air, like the faint scent of Daniel's cologne after he'd driven me home. Today feels different, I thought, sitting up and brushing a hand through my hair. But how different? I dressed carefully, choosing a blouse that felt both professional and soft, something that might quietly mirror the shift in my feelings. As I fastened a single pearl earring, I caught my reflection in the mirror and paused. The woman looking back at me seemed lighter somehow, as though a weight had been lifted. Is this what hope looks like? When I arrived at the office, Daniel was already there, leaning casually against the doorframe of his office, a cup of coffee in hand. His eyes met mine, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. It wasn't awkward, it was charged, like the air before a summer storm. "Good morning, Gabriel," he said finally, his voice low and warm. He stepped aside, gesturing for me to enter his office. "Morning," I replied, my voice steady despite the flutter in my chest. I walked past him, catching the faintest hint of his aftershave, spicy and familiar. He closed the door behind us, the soft click of the latch sounding louder than it should have. "I was thinking," he began, setting his coffee down on the desk, "maybe we could grab lunch today. Somewhere quieter. Just the two of us." I raised an eyebrow, a small smile tugging at the corner of my lips. "Isn't that what we've been doing?" He chuckled, the sound rich and inviting. "True. But this time, it's different." Everything's different, I thought, though I didn't say it out loud. Instead, I nodded. "All right. Lunch it is." The morning passed in a blur of emails and meetings, but every time our eyes met, I felt that same electric pull, as though we were sharing a secret no one else could see. When noon finally rolled around, Daniel appeared at my desk, his coat slung over one arm. "Ready?" he asked, holding out his hand. I hesitated for only a moment before taking it, his fingers warm and firm around mine. "This is happening," I reminded myself as we stepped into the elevator, the silence between us comfortable but thick with unspoken words. He drove us to a small, secluded cafe tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. The air smelled of freshly baked bread and brewing coffee, and the sunlight filtering through the windows painted everything in a soft, golden glow. We ordered without speaking, a wordless understanding passing between us. When our plates arrived, Daniel leaned forward slightly, his eyes searching mine. "So," he said quietly, "how are you feeling about everything?" I took a sip of water, buying myself a moment to think. "Honestly? I'm still processing. It's a lot to take in." He nodded, his expression serious but kind. "I understand. And I don't want to rush anything. I want you to know that I'm here. That this, us, matters to me." His words were simple, but they carried a weight that made my breath catch. "Thank you," I said softly. "That means a lot." We ate in companionable silence for a while, the clink of cutlery and the hum of conversation from other tables filling the space between us. But every now and then, I'd catch him looking at me, his gaze steady and intent, and it sent a shiver down my spine. After we'd finished, Daniel reached across the table, his hand covering mine. "Gabriel," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I know this is complicated. But I also know that life is too short to let moments like this slip away." I looked down at our hands, his fingers tracing gentle circles over mine. He's right, I realized. And maybe I'm ready to take that leap. I'm scared, I admitted, meeting his gaze. But I'm also hopeful. His smile was soft, almost tender. That's all I need to hear. The drive back to the office was quiet, but the silence between us was no longer heavy, it was warm, like the space between shared breaths. When we arrived, Daniel parked the car but made no move to get out. Instead, he turned to face me, his expression earnest. "Gabriel," he said, his voice steady but with a hint of vulnerability, "I've spent so much of my life focused on work, on responsibilities. But now, with you, I feel like I'm finally living. And I don't want to waste that." I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes, but I blinked them away. "Neither do I whispered. He reached up, brushing a strand of hair from my face, his touch so gentle it made my heart ache. "Then let's do this. Together." I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. He leaned in, his lips brushing against mine in a kiss that was soft and tentative but filled with promise. It wasn't just a kiss, it was a beginning, a quiet declaration of something new and beautiful. When we finally pulled apart, I felt breathless, my heart pounding in my chest. "We should get back," I said, my voice trembling. He smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Yeah. But first," he leaned in again, his forehead resting against mine. "Just a little longer." And we stayed like that, the world outside the car fading away until all that was left was the two of us, suspended in a moment that felt both fleeting and infinite. As we stepped back into the office, I caught him glancing at me, a small, secret smile playing on his lips. I returned it, feeling a warmth spread through me that had nothing to do with the sunlight streaming through the windows. The rest of the day passed in a haze, my thoughts drifting back to the cafe, to the drive, to him. When the clock struck 5, Daniel appeared at my desk once more, his coat in hand. "Walk you to your car?" he asked, his tone casual but his eyes betraying the nervousness beneath the surface. I smiled, feeling a thrill run through me. "I'd like that." We walked side by side, the distance between us shrinking with every step. When we reached my car, he turned to face me, his hands in his pockets but his gaze locked on mine. "Gabriel," he began, his voice low but steady, "I meant what I said earlier. Us, it's important to me. And I want to make sure you know that." I nodded, my heart swelling in my chest. "I know. And I feel the same way." He smiled, the kind of smile that made everything else fade into the background. "Good." I reached for my keys, but before I could unlock the door, he stepped closer, his hand brushing against mine. Can I see you tomorrow?" The question was simple, but the way he asked it, with that blend of hope and uncertainty, made my breath catch. "Yes," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'd like that." He nodded, his smile widening. "Then it's a date." I turned to unlock my car, but before I could open the door, his hand closed over mine again. "Gabriel," he said, his voice soft but firm, "take care of yourself. And don't overthink things. Just let it be what it is." I looked up at him, his face illuminated by the golden light of the setting sun. "I'll try," I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. He stepped back, giving me space but never breaking eye contact. "Good night, Gabriel." "Good night, Daniel." As I drove home, his words echoed in my mind, each one a reminder of the fragile but beautiful thing we were building. "Don't overthink it," I told myself, though the temptation was there. "Just let it be." But as I pulled into my driveway, I couldn't help but wonder, what happens next? I stepped out of the car, the cool evening air brushing against my skin, and looked up at the stars beginning to dot the sky. Maybe, I thought, that's the beauty of it. Not knowing. Just being. And for the first time in a long time, I felt
you.